Thank you, Rosa, for those beautiful, kind words. You know, Mickey told me to be sure to stop at 1:25. So I was reminded when I first started our television mass in San Antonio, I was told I had 57 and a half minutes for the mass. Well, I wasn't used to watching the clock and saying mass. There's no our Latino parishes. It would have good music, good preaching, little kids running over the church and so forth. People don't look at their clocks. So I was used to kind of a very Latino mass. And one of the first Sundays I was on the televised mass, I got carried away because people were participating. And I got to the presenting the communion. You know, behold the Lamb of God who takes away the sin of the world. Well, that instant, it was 57 and a half minutes. So television those days changed automatically. Well, the program that followed the Mass was wrestling. And you had two monsters going at each other. So boy, I heard it from everyone. From there on, I could finish the Mass in 57 and a half minutes. So Mickey, you can relax. I will finish at 1:25. In some way, bring it together at 1:25. I've always felt for us Latinos, it's not a problem to speak. It's just a problem to end. So I will try to change that today. But I'm very honored. I'm deeply, deeply honored for the friendships, for the confianza. Really, it's just beautiful to come here today and to see so many good friends and to meet new ones, people that I admire from a distance, as you know my name. As I said together so often, it's together we make a difference. And each one doing from their perspective, up to mine from the perspective of a priest, from an educator, a politician, a business person, all of us are part of that team that will make it for our people and for humanity. I was born and raised in San Antonio, West Side San Antonio. My parents were immigrants. Mother came from La Capital, Capitaleña. Daddy came from Chihuahua, and they both came for the same reason, economic poverty and need. They came as young persons. Mother was 12, father was 13. They know any English, made their way in, struggled, met at San Fernando Cathedral, where I later became the priest. And San Fernando was very special because he was founded in 1731. George Washington was not born yet. And as a viejita told me one time, she was a descendant of the originals. My parents had immigrated. Her parents had come with the Canary Islanders in the 1700s. Said, pues mire padrecito. Our family was here when the Spanish people first arrived. It became New Spain. Then our family was still here when this became Mexico. Then our family was still here when this became the Republic of Texas. Then our family is still here when it became the United States. Our family is still here when it became the Confederacy of the South. And our family is still here now that it's United States. Padrecito, we don't know what country will be coming through here next. But we'll still be here. So you see, some of us have a sense of roots, of profound roots. Of having been there and started to make San Antonio. San Antonio has ancient roots, if you can imagine this, of 10,000 years of life, of continuous life, that's been coming together and mingling and providing for the people. So having been born in San Antonio, I became of that. But I was born in that beautiful portion of San Antonio where the only language, the only tradition, the only customs was Espanol. We didn't know any other language. We had our panaderias, we had our arberias, we had our tortillerias, we had our movie stars, we had our theaters, El Nacional, El Alameda. But everything was Mexico in the U.S. I think I grew up in paradise. I mean, people loved each other, our music, our songs, our traditions, and so forth, until I went to school. And that was the most traumatic moment that I can remember in my life. When I went to school, I didn't know what all those foreigners were talking. They were speaking English. I had never heard English. So my dear friends, I flunked the first grade. That was my first experience, and I hated school. I was daydreaming, I was looking out the window. I wanted to quit, but my parents, who had had little to no education, said education's a must. I'll never forget that, and I will always be grateful. They had not had the privilege of an education, but they knew for my sister and I, education was an unquestioned fact. We're going to go all the way. And so my mother stayed on me. I was so creative in making excuses. I could create any excuse you would imagine for not going to school. But you know what? They never worked. Because mother said, no, a la escuela, vámonos, aguántate. There's where the aguante became a virtue. Te sientes mal? Aguántate. Aguántate. Put up with it, Aguántate. And I tell a lot of kids in high school, I tell a lot of young people today, that's an important virtue. If you don't like school, you have boring teacher, you have bad food, you have boring textbook, aguántense. Aguántese and go for it, And so I learned that from my parents. Finally, I had a teacher in the 5th grade that made all the difference in the world. And she was a German nun. But she took a personal interest in me. She took a personal interest, and all of a sudden, everything started to change. All of a sudden, rather than hating school, I started to love school. All of a sudden, I got excited. I wanted to study more. I wanted to go. From there on, I started to move from just barely passing, to making good grades, to making excellent grades. One person made a difference. One person that was not a Mexican American, was not a Latina, but she believed in me. She believed in me as I was and started to give me a strong sense. Because I had been living, the whole thing, who am I? And by the way, in that time, my name was changed. In those days, you didn't question the teachers. The teachers could not pronounce Virgilio. That was just too big for them. So they named me Virgil. So at school, I was Virgil. At home, I was Virgilio. And I was reminded of this father that didn't want his son to go through all the trauma of the teachers not understanding Mexican names. So he told his son, when you go to school, this is the way you pronounce your name in English. And he wrote down very carefully for him on a piece of paper. So he got to school, teachers go on the row, and teacher said, son, what's your name? My name is Pretty Near See the War. Teacher said, what? Yes, my name is Pretty Near See the War. So teacher asked him to bring his birth certificate up. Well, his name was Casimiro Guerra. So, that poor kid lived with that name afterwards. But anyway, to make the story short, because my time's going up, I went to school. I started to realize that going to school and going to college in those days was a privilege. There were very few Latinos in college. I was going to study science. I wanted to be a scientist. I actually my first degree in chemistry and mathematics. So those of you going for science, go for it. I was very excited. But in the context of going to college, I started to realize that as a Latino in college, I had an obligation to my community. And those were the days where segregation was unquestioned, where low wages, all the evils were there. And we had in San Antonio, we had the fortune of having an Archbishop Robert E. Lucy, who was totally committed to the social agenda. He desegregated schools way before anybody in the country did. He really pushed for just wages. He pushed the Mexican American to get educated. He said he refused to believe that we were inferior to anybody else. I was very inspired by him. He was one person from, quote, the establishment that was really speaking something I could understand, made sense to me as a Mexican American, and seeing the suffering, segregation, exploitation, so forth that was rampant, was around. So that what inspired me to change from science to the priesthood, that the church could make a difference. That the church, because God believed in equality, because God believed in equal opportunity, that was the basic tenet of the Bible. Every man and woman, not black, white, Japanese, Mexican, every man and woman, because we're human, is created to the image and likeness of God. That every man and woman is sacred, and there's no one that's less than others. So I saw an archbishop that also was taking a stand that was so marvelous. So that's what inspired me to go to the priesthood. I went to the seminary, I became a priest, and I became a priest precisely at the time when the civil rights movement was going, when all the Chicano movements were beginning, when LULAC was going very strong. My father, by the way, had been a member of LULAC, and by the way, I had worked for the first election of Henry B. Gonzalez to city mayor, to city councilman. I had walked the neighborhood organizing bingos to raise money to get him elected. So I'd been involved since I was a kid, in all of this. But anyway, I became a priest, and all these things were in motion. And for us in the church, Vatican II was in motion, where it called us as a church to be concerned about the poor, where it calls us as a church to develop a pride in the culture of a people, that a culture of a people was a gift, to develop a pride in the music, in the art, everything that made a people, and that this should be part of the church, that the church should not just be something European, it should come out of the people, out of the soul of the people. Those were the civil rights movement. Vatican II had a tremendous impact in me as a young priest just beginning. And at that time, we actually founded an organization called Padres to confront the Catholic Church from within, to confront the Catholic Church, to open the doors to the whole aspect of Latino culture, and to get involved in education, in political education, in community organizing, in labor organizing, and to get involved in bringing in the Latino culture into the church. So we started to confront our church from within. At that time, I had the privilege to go to an international church meeting, my first contact with the international community in Medellin, Colombia, 1968. It was a crucial year for the church in Latin America, where the church after Vatican II started rereading the Bible from the perspective of that which is the core of the Bible, that the Bible is the book of the failures and sufferings and struggles of people who don't give up, who precisely amidst their suffering and struggle develop a new hope and a new vision and become even greater than before. So rather than seeing poor little me, that precisely out of the suffering there's new vision and hope. That was fascinating for me, to read the Bible from that perspective, that the Bible is a book of hope, of people that don't give up, of people that even take pain and suffering as a challenge to do something better and new that has not even been thought about. Read the prophets of the Old Testament. When the people were in exile, that's when they developed the most beautiful, fascinating thought. That's when they started thinking of a new heaven, a new earth, and a new humanity. When they were at their worst, they thought their most fascinating thoughts. And that was fascinating for me. I said, you know, this is where we have to go. Not just to do patch-up work, but to do something new and exciting. Be not just for us, but for everyone. So Medellin was very important for me. And from there, I started to try to understand our whole encounter of cultures, Latino USA. And I found out about the center in Asia, the East Asian Pastoral Institute, that was studying the encounter of cultures, the encounter of the East and the West. And I went and spent 2 years in Asia. I worked in Asia at the East Asian Pastoral Institute. I studied anthropology. It was fascinating 2 years, living with Chinese and Japanese and Malaysians and Africans, and really for the first time, stepping totally outside my comfort zones and seeing myself from another perspective. It gave me insights into our own Latino struggle that I never suspected. It was fast. I had to step out to see in, to gain insight. I had to take distance to gain perspective. And it was a fascinating time, really marked me in my life. On the way back, I stopped in Mexico City. And this was one of the core moments. I've been in Mexico many times. I have great relatives there. But I went with a friend to the Plaza de las Tres Culturas. I don't know if any of you have been there. I've been struggling with identity. Was I Mexican? Was I American? If I go to Mexico, no matter how well I try to speak my Spanish, I'm sure many of you had that experience. Bueno, para Pocho, tu español no está tan mal. No matter how much I tried, you know. But over here, no matter how much I tried to speak English well, I'm sure it happens to you, somebody will remind me, well, for a Mexican, your English isn't too bad. You know. So where was I? You know, I was not at home here, I was not at home there. So I'd really been struggling with those questions of who am I, where am I, where is home, where's the place where I belong? When the Plaza de las Tres Culturas, I really had a mystical, powerful experience. I don't know if you've been there. It's a plaza where the final battles between Cortés and Cuauhtémoc took place. They were bloody. And now today you have the ancient Colonial Church over the Indian ruins and high-rise apartments. They have a plaque there that became a pivotal moment in my own thinking. It says, "En la noche triste, on the sad night of August the 13th, 1521, valiantly taken by Cortés, heroically defended by Cuauhtémoc, it was neither a defeat nor a victory, but el doloroso parto, the painful birth of the mestizo people, which is Mexico today. To be able to change from the categories of conquest, to be able to oppress, oppressor, victim, victimizer, to be able to see things not as either or, but as a birth, as a nacimiento, as a doloroso nacimiento. It's painful, the struggle, but it's a nacimiento. And because there's a nacimiento, there's hope, there's life, there's new possibilities. That changed my way of thinking. That experience really started to make me think a lot more. So to see that the great frontera between Latin America and the United States wasn't just a political frontier, it wasn't just geographical. It was really a frontera, not as a line of division, but to begin to see a frontera as the cradle of a new humanity, as the birth of a new humanity that's been enriched by the sources that come into it. And to be able to see frontera in that sense, and it was that notion that we founded the Mexican American Cultural Center in San Antonio, Texas, to begin to look deeper at the dynamics, en la dinámica de este encuentro, where there could be a mutuality of enrichment where we could all be winners and not losers. We would all contribute the best, be enriched by the beauty of the United States, but not at the cost of losing the beauty that we bring with us from Mexico, Colombia, Ecuador, Brazil. I was challenged by a friend from France. He said, come to France and do it with us. Well, I think the fascination of going to France for a while was more exciting than the doctorate. The idea of living in Paris for a couple of years, man, that was great, and it was great. So I took up the challenge. And I spent some summers learning French, and I went and did my doctoral studies in France. And it was another pivotal experience to really go deeper into our European roots, which are our Spanish roots, which I never fully had appreciated. And to see the beauty of Spain, that had been kind of the bucket of Europe, that Spain had been the recipient of all the great civilizations of Europe, and had pulled it together about the time of the encounter with America. And that was us, the rich indigenous cultures. And I started to discover the African influence in Mexico. I never had known that. I never had known that the second president of Mexico was an Afro-Mexican. I never known that a couple of the states in Mexico are named African leaders. I had never known that Cura Morelos was an African Mexican, the leader of the American War for Independence. So to start to see that it wasn't just Europe, Native America with its Asian roots, but also Afro-American coming together within our bodies, within our blood, within our system. So I started to go and start to pull all that together into a doctorate degree. And through that, I was invited to work in the International Theological Commission, which included theologians from Europe, Africa, Asia. And so we would meet once a year and would publish, each one of us published one book once a year, which I'll make translated to 7 different languages. So that was a tremendous worldwide impact already coming in. And then we also started at that time the Ecumenical Association of Third World Theologians to bring Asian thinkers together with Latin American thinkers, with African thinkers, and the minorities of the U.S., African Americans, Latin Americans, Native Americans. And it was fascinating. It was fascinating to bring these people together. We meet in a different continent each year, sometimes in Asia, sometimes in Latin America, sometimes in India. And so that was a tremendous thing of bringing people together. And finally, we started to realize the importance of teaching. I went to San Fernando Cathedral, and there I started the television mass, which we worked with Telemundo, we worked with Univision. At one time, we had the most popular program in Chicago, in Los Angeles. It was amazing. And it was simple. We brought our folklore into it. We brought our canción, our danzas, our beauty, and people loved it. It was a Catholic mass, but con un sabor latino. It had real sabor de chile con carne y frijoles. And we'd bring that, we'd decorate the church with that, It was ours. And I had to tell you quick one, and I'm almost finished. Don't forget, a viejita was singing a song, Yo soy una oveja perdida que alaba lejos, muy lejos de mi Señor. Now this is the way she was singing it. Yo soy una vieja perdida que alaba lejos, muy lejos con otro Señor. So I've never forgotten that one. But San Fernando really brought to me the importance of enriching our religion, but then our religion enrich our movement. At the basis is a God who says, don't give up. At the base of God who says, because you suffered, you can create new vision and new dreams that others have not thought about. And that's the work I've been doing at Notre Dame since starting to teach University of Notre Dame, that's 6 years. To try to create a new vision, try to create new dreams where Latinos can be a part of it, not just at the undergraduate level, the master's level and the PhD level. We're very lacking that level. And we need to get into psychology, sociology, history, every field. That's our challenge. Today, my dear friends, I'm so grateful to God, my parents, my family, my friends, the people I've learned so much from. They've been our greatest teachers. And I could thank God never enough. I think today at our mestizaje, we need to create a new vision for humanity, not just for Hispanics in the U.S. I think somewhere in our body and blood, we carry the genes and the chromosomes of all the peoples of the world already. Now I think we have to exteriorize this and come up with a sense of vision and dreams. I dare to dream, and I do dream. I probably will never see it in my lifetime. But I dream when someday we'll have a real new world. We'll have a new world, people of all backgrounds can really come together and enrich each other. where people from a hemisphere without borders. If Europe can have a common Europe, why can we not have a common America someday? I know it's not easy. I know I may not see it in my lifetime, pero ¿por qué no? ¿Por qué no? You know, for those who trust in God, nothing is impossible. My dear friends, we are a people of faith, and we're people that God is calling to greatness far beyond our imagination at this moment. And we can do it if we trust ourselves, we trust our God, we trust each other, and we work together, nudge our welfare for the good of humanity. God bless you. Thanks for inviting me.
Father Elizondo, on behalf of our Latino Leaders Luncheon Series, I want to thank you so much for your commitment, your leadership of our community, our Nambe Eagle Leadership Award.